Thanks everyone for sticking around. I know it's the last panel of the day, but I think we got an interesting topic, and it'll be a thoughtful discussion, and hopefully everyone comes away from this room a little smarter. So the title of the panel today is Operators versus Suppliers and what it means for social casino indie devs. The context is operators and suppliers have been clashing over content usage when it comes to online and mobile social casino apps. This ongoing battle in the casino industry poses potential opportunities for independent social casino developers. What we're going to discuss today is some of the current situation, where it might be heading, and whether or not social casino developers can capitalize on it, and if so, how. So we got a great panel here, all very distinguished, and I think all are going to bring a lot to the table. And let them each introduce themselves. If you can just provide a quick bio and just a snippet about your company, I think it would be helpful. Michael, why don't you get us started?
So Michael Carpenter, CEO from Ruby 7 Studios. We're year 5 now, providing social casinos for mostly a B2B effort, running the B2C efforts for Tropicana, Delaware North, Pechanga, Gala Coral in the UK, and that's it.
Luisa Woods, I'm with Tropicana Entertainment. We have both real money and social gaming. Ruby 7 is our partner on our social gaming platform. I've been in the online gaming space on both the real money and the social side for coming on 2 decades before we'd even really come up with these names, and so it's fascinating to see how this is all growing and coming together.
I'm Gabriel Cianchetto. I'm with Greentube. Greentube is part of the Novomatic group of companies, and we've been doing social casino gaming, real money, and gaming in Europe for well over 7 years. I think social, we've been doing it about 12. And in the U.S., our big focus is on B2B white label social casino solutions for the operators.
I'm Kunal, Mishra, President, CFO of Spin Games. We are a provider of content for the online iGaming market, and we're also an aggregator of content for some of the larger OEMs in the slot business.
All right, great. So with the introductions out of the way, we're going to jump right into it. I think if you listen to Mark's last panel, that was pretty interesting, and I think kind of was a good segue into to some of the topics we're going to discuss, and one of the key ones being content. For a number of years, and to this date, it's well known that the gaming equipment suppliers, the IGT, Scientific Games, Aristocrats of the world, have been reluctant, and in many cases just do not license their land-based math models, contents, machines for social. They've kept it to themselves. And so the question to you guys is, does anyone expect this dynamic to change? Or asked another way, and I think Gabe brought this up, was, why are they so reluctant to license it to some of their land-based partners? So Gabriel, since we've had some chat on this, why don't you start us off and give your opinion? Why are the suppliers so reluctant to provide their content in a social environment?
Well, I think when I discussed that with Adam, and I think Luisa could probably give her view as an operator on that, her perspective on it as well. How I see it as a technology provider, Michael probably to a certain extent as a technology provider might look at it this way as well. So, as Adam mentioned, you had Scientific Games and Aristocrat. I think we might, Adam, have to take IGT or look at IGT out of it now, since they have been acquired by W, and I think probably part of that deal has been some type of exclusivity. So that might not be an issue, and IGT can explain that away. I think, but if you take a step back and put it in larger perspective, so I think what happened was the manufacturers, when IGT acquired Double Down, when Sci Games acquired, and they came out with Jackpot Party, and I think Aristocrat with Product Madness. So you now had equipment suppliers to the casino operators competing directly with them online in social casino gaming. So that created a conflict. So when casino operators decided to start to look into the market, like Foxwoods, who got into that game early on with Frank and his team there trying to get into that space, I think there became a conflict when the casino operator then went to their customer, their client, their clients, and they said to them, look, we want you to supply some content to us online. We buy equipment from you. We spend a lot of money with you in systems, and we buy machines from you every year. We just want to have some content for our new social casino. And pretty much the manufacturers told them a flat out no. So that became an issue of contention of, I think, the why. The manufacturers were protecting their B2C initiatives, and it ran into conflict as their clients, the casino operators, slowly started to bring their own branded online social casinos on, and that caused some of the why.
Luisa, you want to provide some additional context?
Absolutely. So, I think that when the suppliers first got into this really was a blue ocean strategy for them. The casinos simply weren't asking them for content. They went out there, they had this content that had proven models, had proven audience appeal, and so they were able to very quickly and inexpensively kind of raise the bar in terms of what was happening in social casino. And of course, as land-based casinos began to want to break into this space, suddenly you've got a situation where, blue ocean is turning into red ocean. It's becoming very, very competitive. Cost of acquiring customers is escalating very rapidly. You've got all of these different product verticals wanting to get into this space and participate in a lot of the rewards of social casino. And from my perspective, it's been really interesting because there seems to be a lot of internal conflicts from the content providers. There are those who have established a revenue stream, and they're looking to protect that, and they're looking at the now of their business. And then there are those who are looking at the future of where social casino gaming is going to go, who I think tend more to advocate for sharing their content with land-based operators because they recognize that there is potentially a low-cost channel of acquisition, that an opportunity to kind of bring down those barriers and create integrated experiences where what's happening on the floor gets extended into the mobile app, and you can leverage the casino infrastructure, their databases. So, it's that conflict that would often give us mixed messages, in fact. You'd get somebody from the company wanting to advocate on your behalf to get the content, somebody responsible for a different part of the company wanting to protect that revenue stream. So I really think it comes down to, as this industry matures, sort of short-term profits versus long-term development, and where do you want to make your investment?
Michael, you have anything to add? I think you guys have done some deals. One of the few that have, anointed few.
Yeah, this is, I think 2017 is the year this finally changes. I don't think it's going to change for the broader social casino market, but for those who are partnered with land-based casinos, we finally have seen nearly every single game manufacturer willing to talk about licensing or already under contract. So, we're partnered with Spin, and we get the Konami content and every content through the Spin platform. You've got Aristocrat licensing to several companies, including Penn Interactive. So I think once that started, I think you'll see Cygames, and I don't think you'll see IGT come around, but any of the main, tier 1 and 2 tier providers, I think, are going to be at least working with the land-based social casinos.
Just to probably tag on that point, right? As Michael said, we provide some of the major OEM content. So there is a push, and I mean, certainly there are always going to be outliers, right? But there is a push from the broader OEM market to be able to get into this segment. But one of the things that they're very, very concerned about at a very micro level too is the presentation of the product. I mean, these guys have spent hundreds of millions of dollars creating these games, and they want this product to look as close to what a box looks like on a casino floor, the playability experience. So some of it is also the technology that's now available and how it's being deployed onto these sites that may also provide a path going forward.
Great. So continuing on that path, I guess I'd ask the question is how important is content today? You always hear kind of the term content is king in this industry, but and you still today have mixed views. I think earlier in the day you had Joe from Double Down talk about the authentic slots. The reason they've been successful is using these proven slot games. But then you also heard from Huge Games and Mirka just now showing that innovation or incorporating all these social elements, you can still be successful. So I'll open it up to anyone who wants to jump in here first on the panel. Where does content rank in terms of all the things you need to do right on in the kind of social casino ecosystem? Okay.
I think Mirka was interesting, right, on how they thought about the whole process, right? So, I mean, from a B2B perspective, working with casino operators, you have a great edge in some way over a pure play social casino. Luisa has a database. They have loyalty. They have loyalty program with customers. Some customers probably have been there for 10, 15 years or more. So you are really starting out with a brand equity, low cost of acquisition. So that is a huge advantage that a casino has. And ultimately, we think about this, you don't want to mix B2C revenue numbers with B2B, why a casino may think about doing a social casino versus a B2C pure play, right? So it's really a huge marketing initiative. It's going to be transformative in what a casino is going to be able to do if they really start to leverage good, solid, custom B2B platforms. It's going to be, Luisa one day may look at taking a chunk, looking at her marketing, traditional marketing budget, and I think somebody was talking about, marketing budgets today, right? I think Seth measured it, or Blaine referenced it, right? Okay, so you're going to be maybe shifting budget from traditional of, all right, what did we just spend $15 million on? We don't quite know. I want to be able to measure everything. I want ROI in every campaign. I want to see the metrics on it, making sure we're getting the ROI we want, or that she wants, or any casino operator will want. So that is going to be the big thing. Now, as far as content, yeah, obviously content is extremely important, but even a casino, a B2B operator has to, once they launch, they have to get even their own players into the game. So activation strategies, retention strategies, all come into play, and live ops becomes, I think, Adam, you're always going to have good games, but your whole live ops and your marketing strategy are in some ways going to be equally as important as the content you have, meaning you have to have people internally that really understand how to market in a digital world.
Anyone else want to add anything to that?
I just wanted to say that I think that defining content is really important because it was so fascinating for me sitting in the audience and listening to people answer the question of what's the secret of a good game? Is it content that people are familiar with from the casino floor? Is it the social element? Is it the meta game? Is it the challenges? Is it the quality of the artwork? And content is really context. It's context that immerses you in the gaming experience. And I think that, you know, all of those magic bullets that people identified as the secret to good content, you know, all go together into creating really engaging content. So, you know, when I'm looking and evaluating content, I'm not just looking at what are the titles that we have. And it was really interesting that we had some people up here with tremendous growth who don't have the big name titles. So I think that absolutely 100% content is king, because respecting your audience and creating an immersive experience for them is the only way you'll ever have a sustainable business. But you have to have a very broad definition of what is content. It's the entire user experience from end to end. And one of the things that I'm excited about, you know, finally after decades having the opportunity to work with a land-based operator that has the incredible infrastructure that they have, is that I can extend content beyond the phone and into the property and create a much broader contextual experience.
Great. You know, there's a lot of talk, and myself, and I think most of the panels today have been on, you know, what we call the B2C social casino market, but really what we're talking about here today is you know, more narrowly defined as the B2B, and I think Gabriel and Luisa kind of touched upon it a little bit, but can you guys just provide some context about the state of the B2B market, how this differs from, you know, traditional B2C, some of the key players, you know, Michael, you're obviously a big part of it. You know, what's that environment look like? What's the ultimate goal? Is it a profit center? Is it a way to drive the land-based gaming? Let's just kind of hear a little bit more about your views on the state of this market.
Yeah, so we really approach the B2B much more like a B2C play. So we're, you know, Tropicana was our first big casino client, and when we approached them, it was really a conversation about, if you want to be mining your database and just trying to extend your brand into social from your database, we're probably not the best provider from that. But if you really want to go after the world with your brand, then we'd love to work with you. And we really, with Trop World, we took a very worldwide approach. And we ran it much more like a B2C opportunity for a B2B relationship. And so we manage, you know, it very much like if Trop World was our own game and we were doing the B2C side of it. You know, the databases from the casinos are one cylinder of that engine that, you know, they certainly help. They're not the holy grail. It's not the only thing that you have to do right is mine the database. Just like content isn't the only cylinder that has to work well as well. So, so what we do when we look at it is we're running B2C. We have partners who are our B2B partners, but it's not really a B2B platform play, and we don't approach our partnerships in that way.
Gabe, you want to talk a little bit about your guys' strategy?
Yeah, so I mean, B2B, the database is just, so when we talk to a casino operator, depending on who that potential partner might be, you have to manage expectations. If you go blowing smoke up everyone's posterior end about revenue numbers on B2C, you are going to have one very disappointed B2B client, right? You have to manage that. A Foxwoods can do big stuff. They have big breadth. They've been around a long time. The Trop can as well. So you have to be very sure about managing expectations. And yes, we go out and we look at the database as the foundation. And then we look at the client and what they're willing to do, what they're capable of doing, and what they want us to do for them. And we start to go out in concentric circles, right? So yes, what Michael said, very important, right? You can go outside of that database right away and start doing UA, right? So, and you can take a multi-prong approach to that, you know, leveraging the database, mining that database until you can't get anything out of it, and then doing UA. So there's a lot of approaches, but it's going to be very dependent. So it could be an individual casino, it could be a multi-property group. So you have to really, Michael's approach is absolutely correct. And as I said, going out and doing it, we take a very measured approach depending on who the client is and managing expectations with that client and what they do, what that client strategy is. So we try to marry the strategy of the client, what they want to do, what they're capable of doing, or how far that brand can be extended. So it's on a very much, Adam, on a case-by-case and structure of the company on how we approach it.
Kunal, how does Spin Games kind of fit in this ecosystem? I imagine you work with a lot of varying partners. Can you kind of talk about your role?
I think we work with most of the panel over here. So our strategy is simple, right? We are a provider of content and also an aggregator of content. So what we do is we have a platform and we have a distribution network into a lot of the platforms out here. So it's kind of a two-phased approach for us. The first is we have to have the premium content. So we spend a lot of time and money developing that or helping some of our partners who are the major box manufacturers put their content onto our platform. And then it's the distribution space out there. So we are, if you look at it, right, from a traditional box perspective, we'd be a component provider to Gabriel, to Michael, and everything like that, who are really the box manufacturers in there. So you can look at us as a component that fits in there to a traditional box guy.
And what are you seeing in terms of some of the content that's resonating right now in social? Do you analyze the land-based market floor? Are there any noticeable differences? Kind of like what do you see as some of the kind of key things that works on the content side?
Well, today, as we continue to expand, we see a correlation between what works on the floor and also and how that plays out in the social space. That being said, there's a couple of things in there which kind of make the market a little bit skewed today. The premium content from the top box manufacturers has not been rolled out in its entirety as yet. As you had said, and as we had discussed it earlier, it's just a fraction of it. So as we release games, we're starting to see those games really start to have more and more momentum, and probably I'll leave it to the three of you to say what effects that has on the other, so-called non-tier 1 box content. But as we roll out more and more games, we definitely see a correlation to what's successful on the slot floor to what's successful on the social space. And I think a lot of that is based too on, I guess there's a gentleman talking earlier about Aristocrat and other companies spending hundreds of millions of dollars. Some of that user experience does translate onto the social space as well.
How about Gabe or Michael? Any kind of noticeable trends or things that you're thinking about on the content side and how you create your applications in social?
Well, for sure, the games from Konami and Every are our top performers, pretty much no matter where they are in the lineup. So, part of that is because of our partnerships with the land-based casino groups, so that we're getting a reasonable amount of customers come into the game from the land-based side, so they're familiar with the games. But I have not been building slot games for 4 decades. And I don't have a team of 4,000 people building the latest and greatest. So, the games from like Jackpot Inferno and China Shores and those games that have been on the casino floors for multi-years, those are going to resonate for the same reason they resonate on the casino floor. The player likes the game experience, or they're used to the game experience and they like the game experience.
For us, and we have the benefit of being a subsidiary of Novomatic, so we can come to the table immediately with the entire Novomatic library. So Novomatic is a powerhouse worldwide, newer to the US market, but what we've been seeing is Novomatic games are not heavily penetrated into the US market, but we've been seeing gameplay, very good gameplay on our sites. So what's going to happen is, and we see this with other things too, that you may have games starting to come and do well that are not on the floor, and I see the manufacturers, certainly Greentube and Novomatic, are looking at this already, where you're going to test games online even before, it's going to be the most efficient way to test content, is to put it out on your social casino or real money, but it would be great, you push it out on the social casino, you have tons of data that you can look at, and then those games might end up going to the floor. And I think this is the real opportunity, Adam, for the Casual Connect developers. Indie developers, it's too expensive, as I mentioned this to Luisa before, it's too expensive for them to try to get into the real money game. They can't do it. But if she wanted to test a whole bunch of games on Michael's site, or if a developer, let's say they cut a deal with Spin, they then have a one-to-many relationship, right? They get their new games onto Spin, onto a bunch of platforms. They're on a bunch of casinos, social casinos across the country. That is a great opportunity for indie developers, so they can have multiple channels. They might be going out there in the B2C space, but they could be making, if they're developing games like Merca, they could be doing multiple channels and having that content on multiple B2B channels as well. So I think it's a great opportunity for indie developers using social to get out and test their games on multiple platforms.
Yeah, that's a great point. I'm glad you brought that up. That was going to be my next question. Is part of this topic is there room for indie developers? And I think we've established that the premium large equipment suppliers, that content resonates. Everyone would love it. They've been reluctant. But what I'm hearing from you, Gabe, is there's still room for the indie developers at a minimum just to kind of start testing their content on multiple channels. Do you guys all agree with that or have any different views? Luisa, it looks like you want to say something here.
I just wanted to say that, it's really kind of a question of hit rate. There are games that we have on the casino floor. We know that they do well. And, it's kind of a slam dunk putting them into the digital realm. But if you were to look on the real money gaming side, for instance, at my top 10 games, not all of them are games that are actually on the casino floor. There are some sleeper hits in there. It's very difficult to pinpoint when is a game going to be a hit. You can have 3 games with the same underlying math model. 1 is a runaway success and 2 just die on the vine. But the appetite for new content is ravenous. And so I think there's a huge willingness on the part of certainly, operators like ourselves to continue testing that content as long as, we can do it within a context that's not risky for us. That the risk is shared. So if people have content, we look at it and it looks like exciting content, I think we're very open generally to test it and see how our audiences respond and to support that with marketing initiatives to kind of draw attention to all of the different content that we have out there.
And continuing on that theme, obviously content is not free. There's some type of fee associated with that. So then how do you guys balance that in terms of, I imagine the more premium proven content is going to be more expensive versus are you willing to take a greater risk with some of the independent stuff if it's at a more attractive fee? So I know you guys probably can't get into the detailed economics of content licensing fees, but maybe touch upon that dynamic when you make a decision to bring in content, and Kunal, obviously I'd love to hear from you here as well. What are you seeing in terms of just generally speaking the content licensing fees and how that impacts your decision making?
From our side, I probably can't go into specifics or I'll have a couple of people out here, come after me. But, by and large, there is a premium content. There is a premium content market in there. And I'll say this to a lot of the independent developers here, as Gabriel and Michael was saying, One of the things you want to do, I've been in the box business most of my life. One of the things you want to do is you want to get as much distribution as possible with your game. Your game may work in some unexpected ways and may not work in some traditional ways where you wanted it to work. There are games that are popular in certain parts of the country that are not that popular outside there. You know, video poker is probably a great example, which tends to be more of a Nevada, Atlantic City style game, and then if you go internationally, you'll struggle to find too many video poker machines in there. But there are genres and profitable genres where your games could fit in, but also, you know, with complete deference to people who've been doing this a lot of, you know, for a long time, innovation usually comes from smaller groups, from more nimble companies, and sometimes that can create a new genre of games. I think the first wheel was put out by a little company known as Anchor Games over 20-something years ago, and look what that spawned, right? Yeah, absolutely, it was Randy. Yep. So, you know, there are different economics. There's a premium economic band, and, you know, then depending on what the operator wants and how they want to position the game, there's certainly economics based on that. But I think there's an appetite to pay for innovation as well from the operator side.
I just kind of add to that is what I've seen is that at least there is kind of for social, there's kind of a industry standard that's out there, that's acceptable. And I think what happens is in the case of some content or premium content providers, they will come to the table with real money commercials. So, you know, you have to get them to, you know, you have to have that conversation, look, this is social, it's not real money. So those commercials must be adjusted for you know, for the social. And that's one of the things, one of the larger things. The other small little nitpicky things are like integration fees. And we all know it takes, like, if you have good APIs, Michael, you could probably do that in 24 hours, right? 48 hours worth of work. It's not like $80,000 to do an integration, right? So small little things like that.
How about brands? So if you visit a casino floor just about anywhere, you see a lot of branded slot machines. And in social, you are starting to see it. You know, Zynga uses quite a bit of brands. Mirka talked about how they did a license with Nat Geo. How do you guys think about it from your side of the industry? You know, the incorporations of brands. Are we going to see more of that in the future? Less? You know, anyone want to jump in? Go ahead, Michael or Luisa.
We actually talked about this a little bit in advance of the panel, and one of the things that I think will happen is that we'll start seeing a broadening of the kinds of licensed brands that come to slot machines. You know, it started out that it was all game shows and TV shows, and, you know, people are kind of working through the inventory and having to broaden their definitions of what is licensable content. And I think that, you know, people always want to have some kind of relationship ongoing with the stories that they like, the shows that they like, the personalities that they like. They're always going to gravitate towards that content. It's a great way of discovering new content. I just think we're going to start seeing it coming from, you know, YouTube personalities and from social games and from other places that are typically non-traditional. And we'll see it come through social, and we'll see it pushed out onto the casino floor as well.
How about talking about some of your competitors here? So some of the operators like Penn Gaming, MGM have taken more of an M&A type of approach to this sector. Do you think we'll start to see more of that, or is it going to remain more of kind of a B2B white label focus? Does anyone have an opinion about you know, that route to market?
Again, it's size of companies, right, and how they might think or approach it, right? A Penn has a lot of options, right, that they could have gone. So they took that route. Others might go a different way. I think as you look at them at the size of the groups or the casinos, they may go more, but having somebody bring the expertise, actually coming in and doing it very efficiently, and not a lot of risk for them, at least up front, so they can get into that game. The larger operators or whether you're tribal or corporate and how you're structured, may decide to go in on an acquisition, and it's interesting on how each one of them may approach it. You know, I guess it's really that corporate strategy, right? Having someone come in, you could save a couple $100 million. You can go out and start blowing a fair amount of money on acquisitions, or you can come in and have someone do it and really get you into the market quickly and efficiently without that cash burn, and actually not having to bring on all of the people attendant to do that. But I guess that's really a corporate structure, a corporate decision at the top of what they want to own and how they want to attempt it.
Michael?
I think it's, for the big providers, it's kind of that, lease model, buy model, or make model. And I think, our parent company chose to buy, but they didn't choose to buy at the Rocket level, the Rocket Gaming level. And I think, as you look at the consolidation that's happened, there aren't that many companies left that are going to be able to fill those kind of Rocket Games level. They do, yeah. Who knows? Maybe next year there'll be another one, but I think the acquisition side of it is probably slowing down.
What about marketing? We kind of touched upon it a little bit already, but what I've noticed is talking to traditional casino operators. One of the challenges a lot of times is understanding just how important the UA side is. Right? There's reluctance among a lot of casino operators to say, wow, we have to spend all this money today, and we're not going to see a return potentially 8, 10, 12 months down the road. So kind of talk about that for the operators here, how that conversation goes, beyond when you want to expand beyond your database. Gabe, you talked about it a little bit, but do you want to expand a little bit?
Again, that's really something we talk about. One of the first things is the strategy, right? I mean, what is the plan here based on that brand, how strong that brand is, what the DMA is of the brand? Is it single property? Is it multi-property in multiple states? So a lot of that comes into play, and getting them to think about, and instinctively, the operators want to spend as little money as possible for the maximum benefit, right? And you get that, and actually they can do that. And you can have a tremendous bang for the buck if you know how to do that. And if you can bring a lot of content to the table, you can really have a big effect on that. And then think about, so it's a question of in some clients we work with, they have a very measured approach, right? They have certain kind of levels for ROI that they want on all of their campaigns or what they're doing on the social casino site. And if you hit certain points, they'll throw additional money into the game. So versus saying, okay, we're going to go all in, we're going to put in X amount per month, we're going to go in heavy and large. It's a different approach for each client, and some are willing to take that approach, and others, Adam, want to have a much more measured and scaled approach. Conservative, if you want to call it a very conservative approach, they'll do that, but they know they're in it for the long run.
So for us, we're on a profit share agreements with all our casinos. So it's all about ROI and 7-day and 30-day ROAS. That's how we do user acquisition. We do all the external user acquisition for all of our partners, and it's all metric driven. If we don't think we can get the money back, then we're wasting it as much as the casino partner is.
I just want to add one thing. On the land-based side, most casino executives are so used to seeing an immediate return on their investment that they want to apply that same model to every other business that they undertake. And so it's really challenging for them when you go to them and say, it's going to cost us this much to acquire a customer. Oh, and by the way, it's going to take 24 months for you to, maybe earn that back. That's just terrifying. And so, when you talk about being conservative, it really is about taking a measured approach, showing them the wins, mixing it up in terms of leveraging the existing properties, the existing database, the existing infrastructure, and mixing that up with the kind of more traditional social digital marketing that other companies in the space are used to doing.
Okay, last question. I know it's the end of the day, but any kind of predictions, bold predictions about where we're heading on any of the topics we discussed today, or content trends in social casino? Skill-based gaming is a popular topic today. New platforms like VR, AR. How do you guys think about this, and any kind of, like I said, bold predictions you want to put out there today on our recording and for the audience? Michael, go ahead.
So I think there's still going to be the companies that grow at 900%. And you had on the graph earlier with Huge. To do that from 2015 to 2016 and have a 10x revenue growth is phenomenal. I mean, that doesn't happen in many industries. And I think there'll be another one of those. There'll probably be several more of those. And this is one of those few industries in the world where companies can go from 0 to 60 miles an hour in a couple seconds. And so I think that'll be 2018 for me.
When people talk about predictions for the industry, they tend to focus on different verticals, whether it's virtual reality or skill-based gaming or esports. The place that I keep expecting to see really significant progress is in the area of personalization. The thing that computer systems, that technology really enables us to do is to customize the experience to the user, and not just customize it ourselves as the operator, but put the tools into the hands of the user to customize the experience themselves. And that's something that I keep expecting to see a lot more of, allowing the user to configure their own screen. What buttons do they want on there? What order of games? What scale of font? What denominations of coins? What rate of progress through challenges? How do they socialize? And I think that that's an area that there's huge room for progress, and that we're not yet figuring out how to really leverage the capabilities of AI in order to be able to do this.
I think you'll see kind of basic stuff. I think you'll see this year and next, you'll probably see a bigger spurt of B2B, a lot more, finally, after all these years of us talking about this for the last 4. You'll start to see, I think, Adam, a pickup of more casinos doing social. They're still talking about it. They're still thinking about it. A lot of them going on year 3 or 4. But you'll see that pickup. I think you'll start to see some companies taking market share away from others. So I think that's going to happen as well on the social casino side. And I'd like to kind of, what Luisa mentioned is, I think AI, particularly on the analytics side, what Optimove is doing, but even with companies getting in on automation, on data, and on analytics on the back end, I think you're going to start to see some really big progress toward that, and automated marketing and personalization, segmentation of the market.
Kunal, anything you want to add?
Just from the content side, right, and especially for all the content developers in here, we've talked a lot about the tier 1 guys and everything else. They start with an incredibly high floor, but they also have a ceiling that's pretty well defined, right, because they're very good in a genre. The thing for the risk reward, I guess, for an indie guy is maybe the floor is a lot lower, but the ceiling could potentially be a lot higher. And that's the way we tend, we're in the content providing business, right? not necessarily was doing our own content, but taking other people's content and distributing it out into the field. So from that perspective, you certainly have risk of your floor being lower, but your ceiling could potentially be game-changing in this space. So I think you've heard a lot on the casino side, but from the content side too. From the content side too, there's a lot of potential upside there.
Great. So I think we got some time for questions, if we have any from the audience.
You guys talked a lot about content, and you talked a lot about the content going from the direction of the floor to online. I want to talk a little bit about the content going the other direction. Like, for example, Merca, they just showed their new game, Scatter Poker, that just came out. Are we going to see that on a machine, on the floor in a casino? Like, are those games now moving that way faster than, well, maybe not faster, but for the first time?
I think that's going to be a question for the manufacturers, right? That would be for an Aristocrat, a Cy Games, a Novomatic, to IGT, to come in and talk to, let's say that Merca might want to have a conversation, right? And because they'll be the only ones that can put those, they have the power and the money and the know-how to do that, right? To get that game into a box. And then have the distribution and the sales force to get it out onto the floors, out on test. And the operators might be much more willing, because if the game did, let's say the game did extremely well online, the operators are going to test the game anyway. That's a standard model in the industry, right? But they may be more willing to do so to get that. But that'll be a question for the main manufacturers to try to, and that's why the indie developers here, I think it's a great opportunity for them, depending on what their plans are, to, if they're thinking about that, they have options if they're really good. A lot of the manufacturers will probably be seeking them out.
I just wanted to say, I think it's completely inevitable. I think that, things that we in this room sit around and believe are inevitable always take a lot longer. We sit around thinking, why is it taking so long for this to happen? Because we all know it has to happen. And then what happens is suddenly it accelerates and it becomes the norm. It was the same thing. I started working in mobile gaming back in 2006. People were playing on screens this big. The games were horrible. We felt like this is inevitable, but when is it going to get there? And it took, we've suddenly reached a tipping point 10 years later, and I would never have dreamed that it would take that long. And I think will absolutely be the same thing here. It's just putting in the time and the energy and the commitment to keep pushing that forward, because it's definitely going to happen.